Right. Would you do us a kindness though today?
Yeah, of course.
Of being in charge?
I will get things going. I'll call this Board of Commissioners meeting to order at 9:02 a.m. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next up, we have District Attorney update. Mr. Felton, please join us.
Chairman, I mentioned rumored Vice Chair. Thank you for this opportunity to meet with you and give you a few updates as to what is happening in the District Attorney's office. I will start out by saying just to continue to update on staffing levels. I will say that we are continuing to be at a historic low only because the status quo in terms of the intake we're having people leave and the applicant pool remains low. And the chuckle is that we use the NeoGov software, and if you go in to look at your applicant pool, there is a column that says trending high, trending low, and on one of them it says trending high. I was like, oh, good, and I went on to it and it had 0 applicants on it. So I just thought that has to be a quirk in the software, but the applicant pool continues to be low, and that's consistent, I find, with my colleagues around the state as well. And we've had those conversations. But one of the positives, so I'm going to give you the good news before I give you the bad news, of course, is that our law clerk situation is very positive. We have our law clerk, Shannon Clausen, who took the bar, who is in the law clerk status, that has accepted a position with us upon her passage of the bar, which we're very confident that when they announce the bar results, some point, they haven't set a firm date as when those are coming out. I know they're being graded right now because I know a couple people when I was at the DA's conference in Seaside were leaving to go do that process. And I think even Judge Casso may have been participating in that. So we think that results are imminent. And upon her passage and then swearing into the bar, she will be a DDA 1, which will be terrific. So we can get her into certain misdemeanor caseload and pick up slack there. And Tia Hansen, our 3rd-year law clerk, has been working regularly. School has started again, so we won't have her as many days a week, but she has been a terrific addition to the office as well. That's positive. Unfortunately, Erin Brady is leaving. This is her last week. She is going to Washington County DA's office, and that is a real loss for us because Erin has handled our high-level sex abuse and child abuse caseload and done very well for us. And historically, even though we're a medium-sized county, we have been fortunate to have a very deep bench in terms of child abuse and sex abuse cases with our former Chief Deputy Jamie Kimberly, who's now at DOJ, doing similar cases, and she's even come back to handle some very, very notable cases, trials and retrials. And gotten some very, very solid convictions for us. And Erin has picked up the baton there and done equally solid work. So that's going to be a loss because we don't have someone sort of on the bench ready to pick those cases up. We have interest certainly from some of our newer attorneys, but we don't have someone who's ready to step in at that level at this point. So that's going to be a real experience loss for us. I just put that out there just to note. The conversation about public defense services and there being challenges for defense lawyers, it is industry-wide, and it affects our ability to do good public safety work for the citizens of this county and making tough choices. So I guess I just keep that bringing that up, and I know it's not new information for this body, and you're in the struggle with us as well. So to that end, my next topic is a conversation we did have at the ODA conference at Seaside among electeds and management people about how we can attract and retain people to this business and those who are already committed to this business. That kind of ties into our legislative package, which I'll talk about a little bit. I'm not going to talk about too much because some of the ideas have not been filed in formal bills, they're just concepts and that kind of thing. But I just want to share some of the ideas. And the tie-in is that one of the ideas is that we're having conversations about compensation package for DDAs, even elected DAs at some level, because there is an overall public safety conversation going on about how we can make the compensation not only for the judicial branch, but for people who choose to work in criminal justice and public safety on the defense side. But also we want to have the conversation for public safety people on all levels. That includes people who are in prosecution. And of course, the ongoing conversation, I say, that applies to police and fire and everyone, to making sure that this career is one that people can choose to stay in and not feel they need to get out of so they can support their families. And to that end, there is an ongoing conversation about how we can get deputy DAs into the police and fire branch of PERS. And they're not there yet. There's been discussion in past sessions about that. And so I think that's one approach that we're going to take again, so that deputy DAs will be included in that branch of people who are eligible for police and fire coverage within the PERS system. I mean, among other things as well. But to me, that is and I know that is something that OAC, probably there's conversations among people you work with, because I know that's something that will affect, counties in particular who are with the buck stops in terms of covering the bill pretty much for DA's offices. So I just put that out there. There's also some policy packages as well that are being discussed. I think some important ones in concept, dealing with recognizing the real impact that fentanyl is having in our communities, addressing that in terms of making sure that there's just things have changed. And as things change in terms of the impact that fentanyl is being addressed, in terms of the real threat it is in our communities, making sure that the laws and the penalties are keeping up with that. So we're going to present packages around that. Some cleanup around courtrooms and recognizing that technology is changing in terms of how we present our cases. So there's going to be some courtroom, basically housekeeping initiatives that we have to make sure that we're able to present our cases well in terms of how we appear in the courtroom and presenting evidence. There have been some changes at the Court of Appeals, and I'm happy to offline sit down with you in detail. I don't want to take this time that we have, which is brief, but I'd be happy to share with these offline with you in more detail because they go on page after page. But also the Court of Appeals has issued some opinions which have clarified some things, but have caused us to track and do things a little bit differently in how we've done them over the past in terms of some drug prosecutions, delivery prosecutions. We're going to approach the legislature to see if we can get some clarification on that in terms of delivery crimes. Also, DUI crimes are going to be addressed in terms of consistency in presenting people who have multiple convictions as well. So we are going to take a fairly proactive approach to drug and alcohol crimes in the legislature, as well as I said, working on trying to make this continue to be the best profession out there for people who want to practice law in the state. Finally, it's been a little bit noisy upstairs around our office, and that's for a good reason, because the work is proceeding on the new grand jury room, which we are looking forward to being done over the next several months. The bars have been removed from, I know Mr. Hawkins is deeply involved in that, but we appreciate the support of this commission in creating a new grand jury room for us and the community, not just for us, but for the community, out of the last of the old jail cells. I've been keeping a photographic diary of change, and but that is a public space. That is, when it is done, it's going to be really, really nice. We've appreciated having grand jury here. I think grand jurors have appreciated, as opposed to the little tiny room. I keep telling people, you should have seen how it used to be before you had a window there. But that will be a very nice space. We're already planning for furniture, screens on the wall, and just a nice presentation space, because as you all know, for the community members, that's sometimes the first time they see our cases. So for us to be able to present felony cases in a space where people can really absorb them, see them, and really consider them is going to be very, very helpful, and makes a good impression on the community, so they consider what your DA's office is doing in terms of the case it's presenting. And so I sincerely appreciate the commitment this commission has made to this office in creating that space. I know money is tight and resources are tight, and expending that is significant, but I think it's a good investment for the future. So that is what I have today. Can I answer questions?
Yeah, so swing back to our workforce pipeline challenges. And again, I appreciate that when you come here to talk about it for the benefit of everybody out there listening or watching this meeting, it's important to continue to keep talking about it so folks understand why this isn't a reflection on your management or your office, but rather a systemic challenge that fits in line with every other profession, it seems. But I want to understand better, because as a workforce champion, I continue to ask this question in every sector. Is there any kind of study work, serious study work, that helps us understand why we have the shortage in lawyers or folks entering the business, if you will? And is this a national trend?
You know, I always, let me answer that again, as I think is appropriate, is I can give you anecdotal experience and my own personal research into what I've seen in trying to answer that question myself. I don't have, and I think, and my organization is committed to undertaking a serious conversation about this at our winter conference in December, which is a more management-oriented conference, because we're all seeing it to different levels. I do see it as a national trend because I'm seeing it in our national publications, people talking about this, and to different, because it's apples and oranges, because to the extent one state has a system of how they attract and hire and pay and different things, you can't compare it to how Oregon does it. But the fact is that it's a conversation in California, in Illinois, and New York indicates to me it is a national issue, because and I start back to the conversation that I had some months ago here, is that we had press going off about this in Eastern Oregon and Central Oregon, smaller offices. There were articles about them losing folks and having openings for a while in those offices. And it was reflected, and I know that our own local paper talked about, when I read an article, when I talked about it here. So it's local here, but even Multnomah County is having the issue as well. But there was also an article in the New York Times some months ago about the Manhattan, I think it was Bronx or Brooklyn office, having the same thing, by prosecutors leaving either for burnout or for some of the changes. And now in New York State, they had a real fairly comprehensive change to their bail laws, which really caused a shift in people in those offices leaving because of dissatisfaction related to that. So that was one sort of systemic change that happened. But then there are things happening in other states as well. So I think for different reasons, there are people who are either leaving the profession or not coming into the profession. So there's not one simple answer, except to say, sort of writ large, this is a trend. And I can just say, take back my own experience, and I share this anecdotally and had it with conversation with people of my generation. When we left law school, these jobs in DA's offices were plum. They were hard to get, they were competitive, and they were really, really sought after. We don't see the same market now. And we don't have a good answer to that, except anecdotally. Some folks don't want to become prosecutors because, one, the salaries aren't high enough to pay their loans, and law school tuition is significantly higher than it was when I graduated. So that's one thing. The work isn't the same as it was. The atmosphere around policing and prosecuting isn't the same as it was back some years ago. So there are radical shifts in the environment. And you can't just say, well, aha, here's one. So there's been a collective shift in the environment around this job. Now, as to attorneys, I can't say because they still turn out a number of lawyers from each of the law schools. The bars are still being sought after. I mean, the bar exams are still being taken at a very high level. So there's not one simple answer. But I do know that we are challenged in terms of this state in medium to small offices getting quality, getting just applicants in general. So that's a long answer to a short question, Commissioner.
Well, no, it's not. I think it takes some thoughtful dialogue here to understand, again, what I perceive as some systemic challenges. But I guess the question is, in order for us to seek the solutions locally that we would need to seek, we'd need to understand how serious this problem is, how widespread it is, what are solutions that others may be testing that solve the problem. I truly believe, again, to the very point you made, a decade ago, as short as a decade ago, there was competition for these positions. Today, apparently not. And so to me, that seems like we don't have enough people in the pipeline seeking these jobs. And there's a limit to, there's a limit to how many of those jobs that folks can seek in the private sector and be successful. I mean, firms, I'm guessing firms that are running their own teams of lawyers are having some challenges with having adequate staffing too. But at some point, today, we need to embrace this and figure out how we're going to solve this problem for Polk County. And that means we have to listen to everybody that's working the problem and understand where their challenges are, what their potential solutions are. The PERS one, this is the first time I've heard that. Makes sense. I don't like it, but I get it. If we have to bring those kind of benefits to every DA's office, that's a big bite financially for every county. And if the whole country doesn't do it, then it's still a problem. But I think that we need to figure out what this is, because at some point, I know we're going to have a real conversation about how much are we going to elevate this pay for, and it's going to exceed yours. Clearly, because we're not talking about your salary. That's a different animal.
Well, I will just, so you're aware, the conversation also involves removing sort of the artificial cutoff between tier 1 and tier 2 counties for elected, the 100,000 differential of population. That's in the mix as well. But just for full disclosure, there is conversation about elected salaries too.
Okay.
In that. But I do think that
I think that's important as well, because again, why would someone come and compete with you for that job if the staff makes more than you do?
Being DA is an extraordinary job, and there are so many benefits that don't have to do with the pay. I always have to put it out there.
Sure.
This job, I am not here for the pay. I am well paid, and I never ignore the fact that I am compensated well, and I'm satisfied with that. That is not my job. Is not about
But in all seriousness, Mr. District Attorney, you might be a dinosaur.
I might be a dinosaur in we're going to put that.
In that concept, you might be a dinosaur.
It's not about pay.
But it also is. It could also be some of the reason why we're having a problem.
Yeah.
Because again, that culture is changing.
Mhm.
That's my point.
So ultimately, I think that this is a statewide piece, and I do think, and I think that commissioners around the state will have to recognize that some level, this can't keep being pushed back on counties of disparate means to foot the bill for district attorney's offices. And that has to be at a statewide level. If the state is compensating public defenders, if the state is doing judges and all these sorts of things, perhaps the conversation has to go back to where it once was, where the state paid a portion of deputy DA's salaries, because what you have is real inequities in abilities around the state. I mean, Lake County and Polk County even are in different places. And so you end up with a different product because ultimately you get very fine attorneys throughout the state who, like we have said, Polk County is a place where you can get a lot of skills, but once you get those skills, you become very attractive to DOJ, to Benton County, to Lynn County, any place that is willing to perhaps figure out a different compensation package. And that is the reality. And that's a reality we face everywhere. And now I'm competing with Washington County. Other places are competing with the U.S. Attorney's Office. So the fundamental question for not only this body, but the state of Oregon is, what kind of public safety and criminal justice system do you want in the state of Oregon? And simply saying, oh, that's the county's responsibility. I'm not sure that's a satisfactory answer, or should it be for statewide elected people?
That is the attitude. I've had conversations with elected officials at the state level, and in the context of the defense attorney crisis that we're undergoing, like, well, we also need prosecutors to keep the wheels of justice moving. There are other needs, and the attitude was, well, those are county employees, and in low tax, mid-sized counties like ours, it's tough to compete. Like you said, we need equity in that area, and to incentivize public service for lawyers, because there are so many other private sector, temptations out there. So,
and I truly respect that this conversation is not isolated among prosecutors or criminal justice professionals. Yep. I believe you probably have conversations on a variety of topics with people at the state level where you may get that answer. And, you're far more experienced than I in having perhaps frustrating conversations at the statewide level in terms of timber resources, transportation resources, that sort of thing. So, but I truly believe it's a statewide conversation. You shouldn't have you shouldn't be able to commit a crime in one part of the state and have a different degree of prosecution because of the experience level or resources of one office. And then if you do it in a different part of the state. And frankly, that's a challenge that is faced. And I come back to, I've asked this question of you individually, but also I asked the statewide leaders, what kind of public safety and criminal justice system do you want to have in the state of Oregon?
Well, I think it's important for us to, as a team for Polk County, to be able to talk about the potential pathways to solutions. So right now, all we're doing here is sharing rhetoric. And so what I would like to be able to do is to sit down with your counterparts and leaders of your association and have a serious conversation about how do we move whatever the solutions are that we could agree to, how do we move them forward in the state of Oregon?
Let me give you this comfort. There are conversations, and I'm not always part of in the room because I have other people from ODA who are in the room with our leadership who are having direct conversations with leadership from the Association of Counties, people that you work with, other elected county commissioners who are in that room. And I just gave you a sliver as to the actual proposals which are moving forward to the legislature. So although we're having this conversation, others that you know and work with, your colleagues, are having specific proposals moving forward. So I just wanted to share this so that not only you, but our community members who are watching know that we're not just sort of outlining the problem, but solutions are happening, and to at least give statewide policy leaders the opportunity to make choices on this. So yes, sir.
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Felton.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner.
SRS, Mr. Hanson.
Commissioners, in your packet is an election form for SRF payments. We received over the $350,000 earmark for SRF. As a result, we have to do an election. Basically, your options are you can 85% down to 80%. So basically, just roughly you can choose between 15% and 20%. Between those, the most you can put into tax free stuff. To give you an example, only 2 counties do the 80%, the rest of the counties do. So, 85 distributed. To approve.
Motion to approve the election form?
I will still move to approve that 85-15 process.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Any non-listed items? Sure, please.
I'm gonna stand, if that's okay, because I can't.
Yeah.
Do I need to, Joey?
No, that's
Okay. Just making sure. I just had a couple things. I know it's your last week and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I just want, as a family, we wanted to just make a public apology to, on record. We had a terrible situation happen within our family almost a year ago. And the information we were given shifted a lot of blame on our district attorney's office. And publicly, I was angry. I was mad. I shared that with family and friends, and as did my family. And recently, we found out that they didn't have all the information, and we, as a family, just felt like we needed to come and make a public apology and always taught my kids when you're wrong, you're wrong, and you apologize. And I just we felt that was very important in this situation. And then as a kudos, I would need to share the good too. I was very excited and impressed, seen on Facebook that on August 17th, the district attorney's office with the child abuse MDT team hosted Corey Joel Jensen, who, with a focus on sex offenders and their behaviors, she's a recognized speaker. I've listened to a lot of her work over the years, doing foster care and whatnot. But it brought my heart some peace and just some happiness, knowing that our district attorney's office and then focuses on training, because those trainings are important. And so often I think even in my own training with foster care and committees that I'm on, too often, especially through COVID, you can watch a video, watch a thing, but you're not really engaged. But having a speaker come, especially at high caliber, such as curriculum, and it gives them an opportunity to see and hear and engage with their colleagues and whatnot. So, and then I think I said last week, but again, I just want to shout out to the victim advocates upstairs, and the PDA, Erin Brady, Haley, I know she's not here anymore, but Mackenzie upstairs too. They're very caring and kind and compassionate. They take a trauma-informed approach when dealing with family members. They have a soft room that makes you feel very comfortable. And like I mentioned last week, I hope at some point, even if it's with me helping raise the funds, that we can get more training in here for our agency from the regulation of San Diego, as well as doing the soft room by Project 11 free of cost. And there's plenty of volunteers that I've gathered up ready to help Project 11 do that if the sheriff's office or Dallas County inclined to accept the offer from them. So yeah, and then again, Wednesday, September 28th, Champions for Children Luncheon at Liberty House. I have 2 tables now. I got an extra table this week, and so if any of you all would like to go to that luncheon, I'd be honored to have you at our table and hear more about what they're doing, the amazing work they're doing for the kids in both Marion and Polk. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you on the 28th. Any other non-listed items? All right, we'll adjourn at 9:33. Thank you.